The stars outside were nothing more than distant, flickering pinpricks in the dark, as Jace Rusty Harlow navigated the Scavenger, his decrepit junk hauler, through the empty void of the Nolson system. It was the farthest outpost in known space, where the cosmos seemed to lose its color, and everything turned a dull shade of black. Jace was a man of simple tastes: scrap metal, engine repairs, and the occasional bad drink at the local bar. He had always been content with his low-key life, floating between the systems, picking up abandoned satellites, scavenging derelict ships, and making just enough credits to keep the Scavenger running. A junk hauler's life was about as glamorous as a rust bucket with a broken engine, but it kept him out of trouble mostly. He sat in the cockpit, one elbow propped up on the armrest, staring at the malfunctioning navigation panel. His ship was an old model, a mishmash of outdated technology and makeshift repairs. The instruments flickered, and a few wires sparked from time to time. He had to manually adjust the power flow, hoping that it wouldn't fry another system. "Come on, girl," Jace muttered to the Scavenger as if his grumbling would make a difference. "Just one more trip. Just one more salvage." The comms console beeped unexpectedly, and Jace straightened up, glancing at the blinking display. Unidentified object detected. Coordinates: Sector 47 Delta 9. Energy readings: anomalous. Jace blinked. He had been flying through these outer systems for years and had never seen a signal from Sector 47 Delta 9. That part of the system was desolate. There was nothing out there but uncharted space and the occasional wreckage. He ran a quick scan, but no ships, stations, or colonies showed up on his radar. "Could be a glitch," Jace muttered, scratching his chin. "Or maybe just another piece of junk, right?" But curiosity gnawed at him. The universe wasn't exactly teeming with surprises at the edge of known space. Most of what he found was nothing more than broken-down drones or long-forgotten equipment, but something about the signal piqued his interest. With a shrug and a sigh, he set a course. "Let's go see what the old girl can find." The Scavenger hummed to life as Jace punched in the coordinates, the ship's engines groaning with effort. He gazed out at the vast emptiness of space. Nothing to the left, nothing to the right. Just an endless, oppressive silence. The stars, normally bright and sharp in the dark sky, seemed muted here. The edges of the universe, he'd heard, were like that washed out, abandoned. As the coordinates blinked on his screen, the blackness around him grew thicker. The stars faded, replaced by a dull shadow that seemed to hang in the air. For a moment, it felt like he was plunging into the abyss. And then out of nowhere it appeared. A hulking, shadowed shape drifted into view, a massive, weathered ship, floating motionless in the void. It wasn't anything like the usual debris Jace scavenged. This ship, it was ancient. Its hull was covered in layers of dust and corrosion, like it had been sitting there for centuries. No power. No life signs. Just eerie, empty stillness. Jace's fingers tightened on the controls. This was no ordinary find. He checked the readings, nothing. Not even a trace of electromagnetic energy. The ghost ship was cold and lifeless. He powered down the Scavenger, bringing his ship alongside the derelict vessel. The docking procedure was simple, but his stomach twisted in nervous anticipation. "All right," Jace muttered as he unstrapped from his seat and grabbed his equipment bag. "Time to make some credits." He suited up in his spacesuit, more out of habit than necessity. It was an old, battered thing just like everything else on the Scavenger. After a quick check of his oxygen levels, Jace opened the airlock and floated out into the void. The moment his boots hit the hull of the ghost ship, a strange sensation washed over him. The surface was cold, colder than it should have been. And the metal, it seemed to hum faintly, as though alive with some hidden energy. Jace turned on his helmet light, illuminating the ship's exterior. There were no markings, no signs of identification. Just metal, old, tarnished, and uninviting. He scanned the hull for an airlock. It took him a few minutes to locate one, hidden in a recess on the side of the ship. As he approached, the lock mechanism powered up with a low, creaking whir. "Well, that's a good sign," Jace muttered. "If this thing has power, maybe it's not entirely scrap." The door opened slowly, revealing an eerily dark interior. His flashlight flickered across the walls, revealing an eerie sight. The ship's corridor stretched ahead, lit by flickering emergency lights. The walls were lined with dust, and a few metal panels had been bent or torn open. A thick layer of something that looked like ancient rust covered the floor. "Looks like someone got the jump on the Scavenger game before me," Jace said with a smirk, but his voice felt small in the vast emptiness of the ship. He took a few tentative steps inside, the door hissing shut behind him. The quiet was oppressive. He checked his scanner for life signs. Nothing. All right, let's see what you've got, Jace muttered, adjusting his backpack. He pulled out his trusty toolkit, flicking open a small door on the ship's wall and scanning the circuit panels. Whatever this ship was, it seemed to be functioning on low power, like an ancient relic from another time. Gotta love old tech, he said with a grin, already thinking about how he'd strip down the ship's core systems for parts. It wasn't a big haul, but if he found any rare components, he could make a small fortune. As he moved deeper into the ship, the air seemed to grow thicker. The faintest whisper of static crackled through his helmet, followed by an almost imperceptible voice. His head snapped up. Who's there? The voice was low and garbled, like a ghost calling from a distant corner. Jace froze, his hand hovering over his blaster. Is this some kind of prank? He asked, his voice tense. But there was no response. Just the hum of the ship's systems. He continued down the darkened hall, his footsteps echoing in the silence. Every now and then, he swore he could hear the faint sound of something moving just out of reach. Suddenly, the lights flickered again. And then, the ship seemed to come alive. Panels slid open with a hiss, revealing a set of control consoles. The display screens blinked to life, casting a ghostly green glow across the room. Jace's pulse quickened. Whatever this ship was, it was waking up. Then the voice came again, clearer this time, but still distorted. Why are you here? Jace's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't alone. Jace's heart pounded in his chest. The voice had come through the comms again, but this time it was sharper, more distinct, almost as if it were speaking directly into his ear. He could feel a cold sweat forming inside his spacesuit. Why are you here? The question hung in the air, its resonance vibrating through his bones. Jace's eyes darted around the control room, trying to locate the source. The lights overhead flickered, casting long shadows on the ship's interior. His helmet light cast eerie glows across walls adorned with strange, unfamiliar symbols. The whole place felt alive, almost sentient, like it was watching him. Jace swallowed hard and tried to push the rising fear out of his mind. Ghost ships were supposed to be relics. Wrecks. Scrap metal. Not alive. All right, he muttered under his breath, trying to gather his wits. This is fine. This is just fine. His voice was shaky, but he wasn't about to let his fear get the best of him. I'm just here for the salvage. No harm done. He took another step forward. The control console hummed with activity, a series of screens flickering to life in rapid succession. A low, resonant tone vibrated through the ship, like a heartbeat beneath the floor. The voice came again, but this time it sounded different, fainter, like it was coming from further away, deeper inside the ship. You should leave now while you still can. Jace's blood ran cold. Something wasn't right. This wasn't just a ship, this was something else. Something was communicating with him, or trying to warn him. His fingers hovered near his blaster, but he wasn't sure if he should draw it. It felt wrong, almost like a violation of some unknown law of space. Who's there? Jace demanded, his voice firm despite the rising fear. What do you want? The response came in a low, mechanical growl like a deep, distant rumble of thunder, echoing through the ship. You have no idea what you've awakened. Jace's gut clenched. He wasn't sure whether he was dealing with some ancient AI, an alien entity, or something far more sinister. But he knew one thing for sure. He was no longer in control of this situation. Suddenly, a new series of alarms blared throughout the ship, and the lights flickered violently, casting the room in bursts of harsh light and shadows. Ah, hell! Jace cursed, pulling out his comm device. Scavenger, do you copy? I've got something weird going on over here. I need a way out. There was no response. The comms were dead. Jace's mind raced. He hadn't been expecting anything like this, just scrap tech, a quick salvage job. Not this haunting. A loud, mechanical clank echoed through the hall. Then, the softest of whispers drifted through his helmet. You're too late. The voice was different this time, distant, but somehow closer. It was like a lingering echo from the past, stretching across the fabric of time. Suddenly, everything went dark. Jace's heart skipped a beat as the lights cut out completely. The sound of the ship groaning echoed in the darkness. His helmet light flickered weakly, casting long, shaking beams across the walls. The eerie silence that followed was deafening. Come on, Jace shouted, slapping the side of his helmet in frustration. I didn't sign up for a haunted house. The comms were dead, and he couldn't even get a reading from his scanner. The whole ship felt like it was turning against him, like the walls themselves were closing in. He backed away from the control console, looking for an exit. The ship's once pristine corridors were now bathed in an unsettling gloom, and every step he took seemed to echo too loudly in the silence. The air was getting colder. Too cold. He could feel the chill creeping through his suit, even as he adjusted the oxygen intake. Something was wrong. Wrong with the air, wrong with the ship itself. A sudden crash echoed from somewhere deep within the ship, followed by the unmistakable sound of metal scraping against metal. Jace whipped his head around, his flashlight beam landing on a hatch across the room. For a moment, he saw movement and outline, a shadow darting from one side of the hallway to the other. Jace's eyes widened, his breath quickening. It was too fast to be a person, too quick for anything he could make sense of. Something was hunting him. The voice returned, louder this time, a strange blend of fear and urgency. "Run. You don't belong here." Jace's instincts kicked in, and he bolted for the hatch. Whatever was happening on this ship, he didn't want to be part of it anymore. He needed to get back to the scavenger and get the hell out of there before whatever was lurking aboard found him. He slammed into the hatch, but it didn't budge. The metal was cold beneath his gloved hands as he tried to pry it open. No, come on," Jace shouted, pulling at the hatch. But the ship's systems were too advanced. It didn't open. Instead, there was a sudden series of mechanical whirs. The walls seemed to hum again, louder, like the ship was waking up like it was alive. Then through the walls, he felt it. A pulse. A wave of energy that seemed to radiate from deep within the heart of the ghost ship. "Hell no," Jace swore, spinning around to face the center of the ship. The pulse was coming from somewhere deeper, somewhere that hadn't been visible before. He started running, not knowing where he was headed, but knowing he had to follow the pulse. It was the only thing that might lead him to safety or, at the very least, an exit. His mind raced with possibilities. A trap? A malfunction? Or was the ship itself trying to communicate with him? He rounded a corner, only to stop dead in his tracks. In the hallway ahead, standing motionless in the dark, was someone. A figure cloaked in shadows. It looked human, but it wasn't. "Who are you?" Jace asked, trying to steady his breath, but his voice caught in his throat. The figure didn't respond. Jace stepped forward cautiously, gripping his blaster. And then the figure spoke, its voice echoing in a language Jace didn't understand. The words weren't human, not in any sense of the word. The figure reached out, its hand stretching unnaturally long, and touched the wall beside it. A ripple ran through the ship like the entire structure was alive, pulsing with energy. "You shouldn't have come," the voice said, the words chilling him to his core. "But now you are here. Now you will see the truth." Jace's heart raced, every nerve in his body screaming for him to run, but his feet were rooted to the spot. Before he could react, the lights flared back on, and the ship seemed to shudder. The walls cracked, the floor rumbled, and Jace stumbled backward. The figure was gone, and in its place, a set of glowing symbols appeared on the wall, glowing in sickly green light. Suddenly, Jace realized, the ghost ship wasn't just haunted. It was a prison, and he was the prisoner. Jace's breath was ragged as he stumbled away from the now-vanished figure. The symbols on the wall continued to glow, casting eerie shadows across the corridor, pulsating with an almost rhythmic energy. It was as if the ship was alive, responding to the presence of the figure, or worse, to his presence. Every instinct in Jace's body screamed for him to run, but something deeper kept him frozen in place. The glowing symbols seemed to beckon him, their hypnotic light pulling him forward despite his better judgment. The comms were still down. His scanner was dead. The scavenger was miles away, and Jace knew he couldn't make it back without help. If he was going to get out of here alive, he needed answers. But the deeper he ventured into the ghost ship, the more it felt like he was walking into a trap. He turned back to the hallway, his steps slow and cautious. The walls seemed to breathe around him, a soft creaking sound like old bones settling. He could hear the hum of machinery somewhere deep within the ship, the low rumble of ancient engines running at low power. The figure, the shadowed form he'd seen earlier, had vanished, but Jace wasn't alone. He could feel it. Something was watching him, following him from the darkness, just beyond the reach of his flashlight. His mind raced as he tried to make sense of it all. What was this ship? What had it been doing here, alone, at the edge of the universe? And why had it been left behind for so long? His gaze fell to the glowing symbols again, and this time he noticed something strange. They were moving, slowly shifting, rearranging themselves on the wall, like a puzzle coming together piece by piece. The symbols weren't random. They formed words in a language he couldn't understand, but instinctively felt were familiar. The void is eternal, the symbols seemed to whisper, but Jace couldn't make out the rest. He reached out to touch them, drawn by an invisible force. The moment his fingers brushed the wall, a shock ran through his arm, sharp and sudden. His body convulsed and his vision blurred. The ship's energy seemed to surge around him, like it was feeding off his presence. "No, not yet," came a voice, faint and distant, but so clear in his mind that it might as well have been his own thoughts. Jace gasped, pulling his hand back from the wall as the shock passed. His pulse hammered in his chest. The voice was that the ship? Or something more sinister? "Leave while you still can," it whispered again, but this time, the voice was pleading, desperate. Jace's fingers trembled, unsure of what to do. Should he follow the voice's warning and flee before it was too late? Or should he push on and uncover the truth about this ghost ship, about what had kept it locked away here, all alone, at the edge of the universe? He gritted his teeth, steeling himself against the fear that threatened to overwhelm him. There was something here, something ancient, powerful, and important. If he could figure it out, maybe he could make a fortune off it. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized he might be playing with forces beyond his comprehension. Before he could make up his mind, a new sound echoed through the ship, soft at first, like a distant hum. But it grew louder, vibrating through the floor beneath his boots. Jace's skin crawled as the sound intensified, like the ship was preparing to awaken. "It's too late." The voice, now clearer, came again, but this time, it wasn't from the comms or the walls. It was coming from inside the ship, from the very depths of its core. He could feel the words in his bones. And then the lights flickered once more, casting everything in a ghostly green glow. "You've unlocked it. Now you will see it." Jace's heart dropped into his stomach. Unlocked what? What was the ship hiding? The symbols on the walls seemed to pulse with energy, and for a moment he swore he could see something moving inside them, a shape, an entity, an ancient being trapped within the very ship. The hum turned into a low growl, reverberating through the ship's structure. The walls trembled as if something inside the ship had come to life, something ancient, something dangerous. A door at the far end of the hall slid open with a groan. Jace hesitated, his breath shallow in his chest. The air around him was thick with tension, the ship now alive with the sound of gears turning, machinery whirring, and the unmistakable sensation of something waking. There was no turning back now. He had come this far. Whatever was hidden inside this ship, he needed to see it. But his mind screamed at him to stop. Get out! But the ship had other plans. The floor beneath him groaned, and the walls closed in as if the ship was shifting, rearranging itself. The door at the far end of the hall opened wider, and through the threshold, Jace could make out a faint glow, bright, almost blinding, yet distant. He stepped forward, each step feeling heavier than the last. The ground beneath him pulsed as if the ship was alive, reacting to his presence. The ship's heart, whatever that meant, was in this direction. Jace reached the door. He wasn't sure what was waiting for him on the other side, but the pull of the ship was irresistible. The glow intensified as he crossed the threshold, and the moment he stepped inside, everything went black. The air was cold, impossibly cold, as if he had stepped into the depths of space itself. His helmet light flickered to life, revealing a massive chamber, a cavern of metal and stone. The walls were covered in the same glowing symbols, pulsating with an unnatural rhythm. In the center of the room was an enormous machine, its shape too strange to fully comprehend, an ancient structure that seemed to defy logic. It was alive, or at least it felt alive. Tendrils of energy snaked through the walls, wrapping around the ship's core. Jace's breath caught in his throat as the machine began to hum, deep and resonant, its core glowing with an eerie, sickly light. The hum grew louder, vibrating the air around him. He instinctively took a step back, but something held him in place. The ship had been waiting for him. A deep, guttural voice echoed through the chamber, filling the space like an ancient god awakening from a long slumber. "You are the key." Jace's eyes widened as the realization hit him like a freight train. This wasn't just a ghost ship. This wasn't just a haunted wreck. This was the prison, and the key was himself. The ancient machine before him pulsed with light, its tendrils of energy reaching out, pulling the ship's walls together, closing off every escape route. The door behind him slammed shut. Jace tried to run, but the ship didn't let him move. No, he shouted, slamming his fists against the walls, but the ship was too powerful. It was awake now, and it was demanding something from him. He wasn't just a scavenger anymore. He was part of the ship's twisted puzzle. Jace struggled against the invisible forces that gripped him. The walls of the chamber seemed to close in around him, the light from the ship's heart pulsating in time with his racing heartbeat. His helmet fogged as his breath quickened. The temperature was plummeting, and it felt as though the ship itself was suffocating him. "You are the key," the voice echoed again, this time sharper, more insistent, like a command rather than a statement. The tendrils of energy that had previously been curling gently around the walls now extended toward him, their touch cold and electric, arcing through the air like lightning. Jace jerked his body away, trying to backtrack to the door, but it was too late. The chamber had sealed itself shut. He could feel the weight of the ships while pressing down on him. His legs felt heavy, as if the very air itself was holding him in place. "The power lies within you," the voice continued, reverberating through his mind. "You have unlocked it. Now you must accept it." Jace's head was spinning. The power? He was just a junk hauler. He had no special abilities, no extraordinary knowledge. He had just stumbled upon a derelict ship in deep space. There had to be a mistake. "I don't know what you're talking about," Jace shouted into the void, his voice cracking as fear began to swallow him whole. "I'm just here for salvage. I didn't unlock anything. A wave of energy surged through the room, silencing him. The light from the ship intensified, searing into his vision. The symbols on the walls flashed in rapid succession, illuminating the entire chamber in a disorienting, blinding glow. Then the room grew still. Jace could hear his own breathing, shallow and ragged. He was sweating now, his helmet fogging even more, his thoughts scrambled. Whatever this ship was, whatever it was trying to make him believe it was happening now. And there was nothing he could do to stop it. Then, as if on cue, the energy tendrils retreated slightly, leaving a gap in the center of the room. Jace's eyes locked onto a strange, shimmering surface at the center of the chamber like an ancient doorway or a portal. It glowed with the same eerie green light, but it pulsed with something deeper. Something primal. Without thinking, Jace took a step forward. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, the chamber's energy surged again, vibrating through his entire body. He gritted his teeth and held his breath, feeling like his very soul was being pulled toward the glowing surface. And then something happened. A strange sensation washed over him like memories flooding his mind. His body trembled, as if he was experiencing 100 lifetimes in the span of a second. Faint images, fleeting but vivid, flashed before his eyes. Strange alien landscapes, star systems he didn't recognize, ships unlike anything he'd ever seen before. And at the center of it all, a figure. A woman, or something that looked like a woman, standing in the midst of a glowing abyss, her eyes burning with power. She reached out toward him, her hand extended as if beckoning him closer. Jace blinked, and the vision vanished. He stood there, his breath caught in his chest. The world felt wrong, like the ship itself had reshaped his reality. "You must take the mantle," the voice whispered once more, this time almost tender, as if it were trying to soothe him. "You have seen the truth. You must become it." Jace could feel something deep within himself shift, as if the ship was trying to merge with him. He fought it, every instinct in his body telling him to run, to tear away from this nightmare. But there was no escape. Not anymore. His vision blurred as the light in the room intensified once more, and then it all went black. Jace awoke to the sound of his own frantic gasps, his fingers clutching at the ground beneath him. His heart was racing, pounding in his chest. The air was thick with the smell of something burning, acrid and sharp. His vision swam before him, the edges of his sight warped and unstable. Slowly, his senses began to return to him. The first thing he noticed was the silence. The ship was no longer humming with energy. The tendrils of power had retreated into the walls, and the symbols no longer glowed, leaving the room in a heavy darkness. For a moment, he couldn't tell whether the ship had stopped functioning or if something far worse was happening. Jace took a shaky breath and pushed himself to his feet. His helmet light flickered on weakly, casting dim shadows across the chamber. The strange portal-like surface he'd seen earlier was now gone. The space before him seemed empty, hollow, like the ship had exhaled a long breath and was waiting for him to make the next move. He stepped forward cautiously, his boots scraping across the floor. There were no sounds, no voices, no signs of the ghostly figures that had plagued him earlier. He wasn't sure if this was worse than the chaos he'd experienced before. At least then, there was action, there was something to fight against. But now the ship felt like a tomb. Suddenly, a hiss broke the silence. Jace froze. From the walls, thin beams of light began to emerge, their soft glow gradually illuminating the chamber. As they did, the symbols from before reappeared, etched into the walls. This time, though, they didn't pulse with energy. They were solid, unchanging, almost frozen in time. Then, a mechanical whir echoed from the far side of the chamber. Jace's eyes snapped to the source of the sound. A panel slid open, revealing a dark shape, something large, something heavy. The shape stepped forward, illuminated by the flickering light. Jace's stomach dropped. The figure that emerged from the darkness was tall, encased in a suit of strange, alien armor. The helmet obscured its face, but there was no mistaking the aura of malevolent power it radiated. The figure's gaze turned toward Jace, and the air seemed to crackle with tension. It spoke, its voice deep and resonant. "You are the key, but you are not the one." Jace's mind raced as he tried to comprehend what was happening. The figure advanced slowly, its movements precise, almost mechanical. Its armor shimmered with a dark energy that seemed to pulse with every step. "I am not the one? What does that mean?" Jace asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The figure raised its hand, and Jace's body froze. His heart thudded in his chest as an overwhelming force gripped him, lifting him off the ground. The figure's voice resonated through his skull, speaking directly into his mind. "The power you've awakened belongs to something much older than you. You are the vessel. The key, yes, but not the one to wield it." Jace felt a sharp, burning sensation in his chest. The ship's energy pulsed within him, twisting and turning, a chaotic force he could no longer control. The figure's words rang in his mind, and the burning intensity was almost too much to bear. "You have awakened the heart of the void," the figure continued. "And now you will learn what it means to carry it within you." And with that, Jace's world exploded into darkness once again. Jace awoke once more, but this time he was no longer in the chamber. He was floating, surrounded by endless blackness. A vast, empty void stretched before him, unbroken and infinite. The stars, distant and cold, flickered far below, like tiny pinpricks of light in an ocean of nothing. The ship was gone. The chamber. The figures. Everything had vanished. It was just him now, suspended in the void. The voice came again, soft and patient. "It is time." Jace's heart pounded. He was weightless, his body adrift in the cosmic abyss. There was nothing to hold on to. No walls, no floor. Just emptiness. The voice spoke again. "The choice is yours. You are the key. But are you worthy of what lies ahead?" Jace struggled to make sense of it all. The power, the ship, the voice, it was too much. He felt like he was drowning in the vastness of the universe, a tiny speck against the backdrop of the unknown. The voice whispered again, "Choose wisely." Jace's heart raced as he drifted in the infinite void, the cosmos around him stretching endlessly. His limbs felt weightless, his body adrift in an expanse of nothing. It was like floating in space without the comforting presence of his ship, of anything, just him and the abyss. The voice was persistent, its tone growing heavier, more insistent. "The choice is yours. Do you accept the power? Do you dare to wield the heart of the void?" Jace swallowed, his throat dry. What was happening? How had he gone from scavenging a derelict ship to being wrapped up in cosmic forces he couldn't even comprehend? The glowing energy, the symbols, the alien figures, it was all connected. Everything he had encountered on this ship had led to this moment. He was the key. But what did that mean? And more importantly, what did the power inside him want? "What happens if I refuse?" Jace finally asked, his voice trembling but defiant. He was exhausted, both physically and mentally, but he had to know. "What if I just want to leave? Just take my ship and go." For a moment, there was silence. The voice did not respond immediately. The void around him seemed to grow colder, darker. Then the voice returned, its words more somber this time. "You cannot escape what you have already awoken. The heart of the void is part of you now. It will not let you go. The power will consume you if you do not accept it. It will twist you, shape you into something unrecognizable. But if you accept it, you will be more than human. You will wield the power of the ancients. You will become something greater." Jace clenched his fists, his mind racing. The idea of becoming something greater, it sounded tempting. After all, who wouldn't want that kind of power? But at what cost? He had already felt the burn of the ship's energy when it surged through him, the overwhelming force that threatened to rip him apart. What if embracing it only meant his destruction? "What are you?" Jace asked, his voice growing stronger, more desperate. What is this ship? And what is the heart of the void? The voice hesitated, then responded, not in words, but in images. Suddenly, Jace was no longer floating in the void. He was standing on a distant world, bathed in golden light. Strange structures rose around him, their designs unlike anything he had ever seen, filled with curves and angles that defied logic. Towering spires stretched up into the sky, and vast fields of alien flora swayed gently in the wind. In the distance, ships of unimaginable design soared through the sky, their sleek bodies cutting through the air with ease. Then the images shifted. The world began to crumble, torn apart by violent energy. The spires shattered, the sky turned dark, and the ground quaked beneath Jace's feet. A wave of destruction swept across the land, and the once pristine city turned to ash. A figure stood in the distance, bathed in shadow, their eyes burning with hatred. The next image was that of a massive ship, its size incomprehensible, tearing through the fabric of space itself. It was the ship he was standing in now, the one that had been lost to time. It was once part of a mighty civilization, a power that had shaped the very stars themselves. Then the final image, a face. A woman, or what appeared to be a woman, her features ethereal and beautiful. But her eyes were cold and empty. Her hand reached out toward Jace, but as she did, her body seemed to dissolve, consumed by the same power that had destroyed the world before. The images faded, and Jace was left in the silence of the void once more. His mind was reeling. This ship, this power, it's from a civilization that was destroyed. The heart of the void is the remnants of their destruction. A weapon, a tool, and a curse all wrapped into one. Jace's body shuddered as the realization hit him. This wasn't just a ghost ship. This was the aftermath of a war fought by beings far beyond anything he could understand. The ship, the heart, and the power it contained were all remnants of that conflict. And now he was caught in the middle. The voice spoke again, its tone now resigned. You have seen what was. You have seen the consequences of wielding such power. The heart of the void is both a gift and a curse. Will you accept it? Jace stood there, floating in the infinite black, the weight of the decision pressing down on him like a crushing force. He had always considered himself a simple man, a junk hauler, a scavenger, someone who took things apart and made a living from the scraps. But now he was facing the unknown. The fate of the entire universe felt like it rested in his hands. And he didn't know what to do. I don't want this, Jace whispered, his voice filled with a deep, aching sorrow. I just want to survive. I just want to leave. But the voice answered him, not with words, but with an overwhelming surge of energy. The tendrils of the ship reached out again, coiling around him, their grip tightening. The force was gentle but inescapable. Jace gasped for breath as the ship's energy poured into him, his body racked with the power of the void. His mind was overwhelmed, flooded with visions, feelings, and memories not his own. The ancient civilization's thoughts, its hopes, its dreams, its ruin swirled in his consciousness like a storm. And then, in that instant, everything changed. He wasn't in the void anymore. He was back on the ship. Jace stumbled, feeling the weight of the energy inside him, swirling, pulsing, but no longer overwhelming. He felt different. His senses were heightened, the air around him sharp and clear. The ship's walls, once cold and empty, now hummed with purpose, the symbols glowing with an intensity he hadn't felt before. He could feel the ship's core, the heart of the void. And for the first time, Jace knew what he had to do. Jace stood before the heart of the ship, the massive core that pulsed with a low, rhythmic hum. He could feel the energy radiating from it, like a heartbeat, and his connection to it was undeniable. He wasn't just a scavenger anymore. The power inside him was too much for him to ignore, too vast to resist. He had made his choice. Not consciously, but with every breath he took, every pulse of energy that coursed through him, he had accepted the ship's will. But there was one thing he could not ignore. One question that still haunted him. The voice, was it the ship? Was it the remnants of the ancient civilization? Or was it something else entirely? What now? Jace whispered aloud, his voice steady despite the chaos inside him. The power didn't scare him anymore. It was a part of him. But his next words were a declaration. Not of acceptance, but of defiance. I won't be your weapon. I won't be your puppet. The core pulsed, as if reacting to his defiance. But Jace stood firm. He would not be consumed. Not by the ship, not by the ancient power. He would find a way to wield it, but on his terms. He wasn't going to let the ghosts of the past decide his future. I'm taking control, Jace said, his voice filled with newfound resolve. The ship responded. A wave of energy erupted, and the heart of the void began to hum louder, its power surging through the ship. The symbols on the walls flared to life once more, brighter than ever before, as if acknowledging his decision. But in the distance, something stirred. Jace wasn't alone. Not anymore. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe the channel for more videos like this.